Breaking, the Supreme Court unanimously upholds the law requiring TikTok to divest from CCP-controlled ByteDance. Event Summary. On January 10, 2025, the Supreme Court of the United States delivered a landmark ruling in the case of TikTok Incorporated et al. v. Garland, unanimously upholding a law that mandates the Chinese parent company of TikTok, ByteDance, to divest its interests in the popular social media platform. The ruling, which has significant implications for over 170 million American users of TikTok, is set to take effect on January 19, 2025, unless ByteDance successfully completes the sale of TikTok by that date. Background and legislative context. The law in question, passed with broad bipartisan support in Congress, arose from escalating concerns regarding national security and the potential for the Chinese government to access American users' data through TikTok. The U.S. government argued that such access could allow for manipulation of content and misinformation campaigns, posing a significant risk to American users' privacy and security. TikTok, which was launched in the U.S. in 2018 and has quickly amassed a vast user base, has consistently denied allegations that it poses a security threat. The platform's defenders, including the ACLU and numerous TikTok users, contended that the law infringes on First Amendment rights, claiming it represents an unprecedented government overreach into free speech and online expression. Legal arguments presented. During the hearings, TikTok's legal team argued that the law unjustly targets the platform based on its Chinese ownership, violating the First Amendment rights of its users by effectively banning them from accessing a significant mode of communication and expression. They emphasized that the government had failed to provide concrete evidence of imminent harm that would justify such a drastic measure. The government, represented by Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, countered that the law was necessary to protect national security. Prelogar pointed to specific instances of data misuse by ByteDance, including allegations that TikTok had been used to track journalists and could be compelled to share data with the Chinese government. The argument underscored a broader narrative of national security concerns linked to foreign-owned technology companies operating within U.S. borders. Court's deliberation and decision. The justices expressed a mix of skepticism and concern during the oral arguments. While they acknowledged the potential free speech implications, many justices, including Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh, indicated a strong inclination to defer to Congress's national security findings. The court's ruling ultimately hinged on the government's assertion that TikTok's ownership structure posed an unacceptable risk of foreign influence. Justice Sonia Sotomayor highlighted the complexity of the case, questioning whether TikTok's First Amendment rights were indeed implicated, since the law primarily targeted its parent company, ByteDance. She noted that the government's actions were aimed at mitigating risks posed by a foreign entity rather than censoring American users directly. The unanimous decision by the Supreme Court reflects a significant judicial endorsement of the government's position on national security, even as concerns about the implications for free speech lingered in the deliberation. Reactions to the ruling. The ruling has sparked a heated debate across various sectors. Advocates for free speech and civil liberties organizations, including the ACLU, expressed profound disappointment, arguing that the decision sets a dangerous precedent for government intervention in online platforms. They argue that the ruling could embolden future administrations to impose restrictions on other foreign-owned platforms under the guise of national security, effectively chilling free expression. Conversely, proponents of the law celebrated the ruling as a necessary step to protect American interests and data privacy. They argue that allowing a foreign entity with ties to the Chinese government to control a platform used by millions of Americans poses inherent risks that must be addressed. Implications for TikTok and its users. As the deadline for compliance approaches, the potential ban on TikTok raises questions about the future of the platform in the U.S. If ByteDance fails to divest by January 19, TikTok would be rendered dark, meaning it could no longer operate within the United States. This would not only impact the company's financial standing but also the livelihoods of countless content creators who rely on the platform for income and exposure. The ruling also brings to light broader issues regarding data privacy, foreign ownership, and the balance between national security and civil liberties. As the government continues to grapple with these complex challenges, the TikTok case may serve as a touchstone for future legal battles concerning technology privacy rights and free expression in the digital age. Conclusion: the Supreme Court's decision to uphold the law demanding TikTok's divestiture from ByteDance marks a pivotal moment in the intersection of technology, national security, and civil liberties. As the legal landscape continues to evolve, the ruling will undoubtedly influence how the U.S. government approaches foreign-owned technology companies and the protections afforded to American users in an increasingly digital world. Consequently, this decision may reshape the future of social media and digital communication, prompting ongoing discussions about the right to free speech in the face of national security concerns. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision to uphold the law requiring TikTok to divest from the Chinese company ByteDance has raised several counterintuitive points regarding free speech, national security, and the implications of government control over online platforms. Here are some of the less expected aspects of this legal battle. 1. Free speech versus national security justifications. While it might seem intuitive that a law restricting a platform used by millions would be a clear violation of free speech, the court appeared to give considerable weight to the government's national security arguments. This contrasts with the expectation that the First Amendment protections would be robust, especially in a country that prides itself on free expression. The notion that potential foreign influence could outweigh domestic users' rights to express themselves was a surprising stance for a court that has historically defended free speech. 2. The role of the parent company. The argument that TikTok's rights could be limited because the law targets its Chinese parent company ByteDance rather than the platform itself is a significant twist. It challenges the conventional view that users of a platform are entitled to the same protections regardless of the ownership of the company behind it. This could set a precedent where users' rights can be overlooked if their platform is owned by a foreign entity, a notion that would likely not be accepted if applied to domestic companies. 3. Bipartisan support for the ban. The strong bipartisan backing for this legislation is counterintuitive given the historical bipartisan reluctance to impose censorship, especially under the guise of national security. The expectation might be that an issue with such implications for free speech would garner division rather than unity across party lines. Instead, the fear of foreign influence has unified lawmakers, suggesting a shift in how national security concerns can override traditional political divides. 4. Implications for other platforms. The law's implications for TikTok could pave the way for similar actions against other foreign-owned platforms, which is a surprising twist in the broader context of internet governance. The precedent set by this ruling could embolden future administrations to pursue aggressive actions against any platform deemed a threat, which raises questions about the extent of government power over digital speech. 5. Lack of concrete evidence. The government's inability to provide solid evidence of TikTok's misuse regarding national security was noted in the arguments but did not seem to sway the court significantly. This challenges the expectation that a government must substantiate its claims with clear and compelling evidence before infringing on constitutional rights. It suggests a troubling trend where the mere possibility of a threat can justify extreme measures, undermining the principle of innocent until proven guilty. 6. Potential for future censorship. The ruling could lead to an environment where the government feels empowered to censor platforms based on vague national security claims. This is a counterintuitive outcome for a society that values freedom of expression. The ruling opens the door for censorship under the pretext of protecting citizens from foreign influences, reminiscent of authoritarian regimes rather than democratic principles. 7. Public perception of TikTok. The public's perception of TikTok as a platform primarily for entertainment and harmless content contrasts sharply with the government's framing of it as a national security threat. This dichotomy suggests that the average user may not fully grasp the implications of government intervention in technology and free speech, indicating a gap between governmental actions and public understanding or concern. 8. Political maneuvering. the involvement of political figures like President-elect Donald Trump, who expressed a desire to find a political resolution, illustrates the complex interplay of politics and legal decisions. This unexpected involvement highlights how legal matters can become entangled with political strategy, potentially undermining the judiciary's independence and leading to outcomes that may not align with constitutional principles. In summary, the Supreme Court's decision to uphold the TikTok divestiture law reveals several counterintuitive dynamics surrounding free speech, national security, and the role of government in regulating digital platforms. These developments challenge conventional expectations about the protection of rights in the face of perceived threats and highlight an evolving landscape of online expression and regulation. The unanimous decision by the Supreme Court to uphold the law requiring TikTok to divest from its Chinese parent company ByteDance is monumental. While much of the media and public discourse has focused on the implications of this ruling for TikTok users and their First Amendment rights, there are several nuanced aspects of the ruling and the surrounding legal context that are significant yet likely to be overlooked. 1. Precedent for national security justifications. One of the most critical elements of this ruling is the precedent it sets for future cases involving national security. The Supreme Court's acceptance of the government's argument that national security concerns can justify the banning of a communication platform opens the door for similar actions against other platforms or services perceived as threats. This legal precedent could enable the government to impose restrictions based on vague or hypothetical national security risks, which may lead to broader censorship and erosion of free speech rights. Significance. The ruling indicates that the government can wield significant power over information platforms in the name of national security, which could be exploited in ways that curtail free speech and limit public discourse. This decision could embolden further legislative actions to control or ban foreign-owned platforms, potentially leading to a fragmented digital landscape where information is subject to government oversight based on nationalistic and security-based narratives. 2. Implications for foreign ownership of U.S. companies. The ruling not only affects TikTok but also sets a precedent regarding foreign ownership in critical technology sectors. The law which compels ByteDance to divest TikTok reflects a growing sentiment in the U.S. about the risks associated with foreign influence in technology that handles vast amounts of user data. Significance. Future acquisitions by foreign entities, especially from nations viewed as adversaries, may face increased scrutiny and potential legislative barriers. This may lead to a chilling effect on foreign investment in the U.S. tech sector, impacting innovation and competition, and could result in retaliatory measures from other nations against U.S. companies operating abroad. 3. The role of bipartisan support. The law mandating TikTok's divestiture received bipartisan support, reflecting a rare moment of consensus in U.S. politics concerning national security and technology policy. This alignment demonstrates a shift in how lawmakers view tech platforms, moving from a largely hands-off approach to one that imposes strict regulations based on perceived risks. Significance. This bipartisan consensus around national security could lead to further legislation that impacts tech companies, potentially establishing a regulatory framework that prioritizes government oversight over market freedoms. The implications for innovation, privacy rights, and the operational landscape for tech companies in the U.S. could be profound if this trend continues. 4. Impact on content moderation and user rights. The legal discourse surrounding this case raised questions about the relationship between content moderation practices and user rights. The justices expressed concerns about the extent to which the government could dictate what content platforms allow, especially in light of national security concerns. Significance. If the ruling leads to more government involvement in content moderation, it could change how platforms operate and how user-generated content is managed. This may result in a more homogenized digital space where platforms are wary of hosting content that could be construed as controversial or politically sensitive, further stifling diverse voices and opinions. 5. Potential for future legal challenges. While the Supreme Court upheld the law, The decision could inspire future legal challenges regarding the scope of government power in relation to digital platforms. The arguments made by TikTok and its users could serve as a foundation for contesting similar laws or actions taken against other platforms in the future. Significance. This ongoing legal discourse may lead to a more robust judicial examination of the interplay between national security and individual rights. It could create a landscape where tech companies and users are more empowered to challenge government overreach, setting the stage for a complex legal battle over the boundaries of free speech in the digital age. Conclusion. The Supreme Court's decision to uphold the law requiring TikTok to divest from ByteDance is not merely a victory or defeat for a single platform, it is a landmark ruling with far-reaching implications for national security, foreign ownership, bipartisan legislative action, content moderation, and future legal challenges. The nuances within this case highlight a critical intersection of technology law and civil liberties that deserves closer scrutiny as it unfolds in the coming years. The full impact of this decision will resonate beyond TikTok, potentially shaping the future landscape of digital communication and the rights of users in an increasingly complex global environment. 1. National security versus First Amendment rights. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision to uphold the law requiring TikTok to divest from ByteDance highlights the ongoing tension between national security concerns and the First Amendment rights of American users. The government asserts that the law aims to prevent potential data misuse and propaganda from the Chinese government, while TikTok and its users argue that the ban infringes on their rights to free speech. This presents a critical point for discussion regarding how far the government can go in the name of security and what constitutes a legitimate threat that warrants such actions. 2. Implications of legislative overreach. The ruling sets a potentially dangerous precedent for future government actions against foreign-owned platforms under the guise of national security. The broad bipartisan support for the law indicates a political landscape willing to prioritize perceived safety over constitutional freedoms, raising questions about legislative overreach and the ability of the government to impose restrictions on free speech and access to information. This point invites an in-depth analysis of the balance between safeguarding national interests and protecting civil liberties. 3. Impact on digital expression and innovation. The law's enforcement could lead to significant changes in how digital platforms operate within the U.S., particularly those owned by foreign entities. The unique algorithmic design of TikTok fosters a distinct environment for content creation and consumption which may not be replicated on other platforms. This situation raises concerns about the impact on creators and the diversity of voices in digital spaces. Analyzing this aspect can provide insights into the broader implications for content moderation, platform dynamics, and the future of social media in America. 4. The role of the judiciary in political matters. The Supreme Court's involvement in a politically charged issue like TikTok illustrates the judiciary's complex role in addressing matters that blend constitutional law with national security. The justices' considerations about the law's implications for free speech rights versus national security interests reveal the challenges courts face in navigating politically sensitive territory. This point invites discussions on the judiciary's responsibility to safeguard constitutional rights while respecting legislative decisions, especially in contexts of heightened public concern about foreign influence and cybersecurity. 1. United States v. Nixon 1974. This landmark Supreme Court case revolved around the Watergate scandal and President Richard Nixon's refusal to release tape recordings and other documents. The court unanimously ruled that the president is not above the law and must comply with subpoenas for evidence in a criminal trial. This case emphasized the principle of accountability in government and the limits of executive power, similar to how the TikTok case raises questions about the government's authority to restrict a platform based on national security concerns. 2. Citizens United v. Federal Election Commission 2010. This controversial Supreme Court decision held that corporate funding of independent political broadcasts cannot be limited under the First Amendment, as it constitutes free speech. The ruling sparked extensive debate about the influence of money in politics and the rights of corporations versus individuals. Like the TikTok case, it showcases the balancing act between governmental interests, here campaign finance regulations, and the rights of individuals or corporations to engage in free expression. 3. Brandenburg vs. Ohio 1969. In this case, the Supreme Court ruled that inflammatory speech, even advocating for illegal action, is protected under the First Amendment unless it incites imminent lawless action. This decision established a high bar for government restrictions on speech. Reflecting the ongoing tension between national security and individual rights. The TikTok ruling similarly grapples with the government's justification for limiting speech in the name of security while considering the constitutional protections afforded to individuals and corporations. The unanimous decision by the U.S. Supreme Court to uphold the law requiring TikTok to divest from its Chinese parent company ByteDance has significant implications for the future of social media data privacy and free speech in the United States. As we look ahead, several predictions can be made about the ramifications of this ruling and the broader landscape of digital communication. 1. Impact on TikTok and similar platforms. With TikTok facing a potential ban in the US and the need for divestiture, we may see a ripple effect across other platforms owned by foreign entities. Companies like WeChat, owned by Tencent, and other apps with significant Chinese ownership could come under increased scrutiny. This could lead to a wave of divestitures or alternative ownership structures as companies seek to comply with U.S. regulations and maintain access to the lucrative American market. 2. Increased regulatory scrutiny on foreign apps. The ruling sets a precedent for increased regulatory oversight of foreign-owned tech companies, especially those that collect user data. Future legislation may emerge aiming to assess and mitigate risks associated with foreign ownership of digital platforms. This could include mandatory audits, compliance requirements for data protection, and stricter regulations on user data handling. 3. Shifts in user behavior and platform popularity. The potential ban on TikTok will likely lead to a shift in user behavior as millions of users seek alternative platforms. This could benefit competitors like Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and emerging social media apps. Platforms that successfully capture the user experience and engagement of TikTok may see a surge in popularity as creators and users migrate. 4. Evolving legal landscape on free speech. The Supreme Court's decision raises critical questions regarding the balance between national security and free speech. Future legal battles are likely as users and advocacy groups push back against perceived overreach by the government. This could lead to more robust discussions and potentially new legal frameworks surrounding the First Amendment rights of digital platforms and their users. 5. Political ramifications and policy changes. The ruling may energize political debates about data privacy, national security, and freedom of expression. As these discussions unfold, we might see a shift in policy priorities, with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle advocating for clearer guidelines on how to handle foreign-owned tech companies. Additionally, the ruling may affect the political landscape, influencing voter perceptions of candidates based on their stances on tech regulation. 6. International relations and trade tensions. The decision to mandate TikTok's divestiture could exacerbate tensions between the US and China, highlighting broader issues of technological competition and cybersecurity. Other countries may respond by scrutinizing US tech firms operating abroad or enacting their own regulations against American companies. This could lead to an increasingly fragmented global digital marketplace. 7. Emergence of new business models. The forced divestiture of TikTok may inspire new business models focused on data privacy and user control. Startups might emerge that prioritize ethical data practices, decentralized platforms, and user ownership of content. This could shift the narrative around social media from ad-driven models to user-centric, privacy-respecting alternatives. 8. Long-term effects on content moderation. As the ruling affects how platforms operate, We might see changes in content moderation policies. Platforms may become more cautious about the content they allow, fearing further regulatory scrutiny. This could lead to increased censorship or conversely a push for more free expression as platforms seek to differentiate themselves from TikTok's situation. 9. Enhanced advocacy for digital rights. The ruling may galvanize advocacy groups focused on digital rights, privacy, and free speech. These organizations could push for stronger protections for users and challenge laws perceived as infringing on rights. This could lead to grassroots movements aimed at protecting online expression and data privacy. Conclusion: the Supreme Court's decision to uphold the law mandating TikTok's divestiture from ByteDance will have profound implications for the digital landscape in the US and beyond. As we navigate this new reality, the interplay between national security, user privacy, and free speech will shape the future of social media, influence regulatory policies, and redefine how users interact online. The next few years will likely witness significant changes as stakeholders adapt to this evolving environment, and the outcomes will resonate far beyond the confines of the TikTok controversy.